My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 38 years old, and I'm from the United States, born and raised in a small town in rural Kentucky. For the past 15 years, I've been working as a long-haul trucker, driving across this great country, from coast to coast, through all kinds of weather and all sorts of places. I always thought I was living the American dream. Good job, decent income, and 7 years ago, I married the woman I thought was the love of my life. Her name was Sarah, and I would have done anything for her. Hell, I did do everything for her. But let me start from the beginning, because this is a story you need to hear. It's a story about love, betrayal, and what happens when a man who's given everything finally decides he's had enough. Part 1. The building years. I guess I should tell you a bit about myself first. Like I said, I'm from Kentucky, a place where people still believe in honest work and keeping your word. My daddy was a trucker and his daddy before him. When I turned 23, it seemed only natural that I'd follow in their footsteps. I got my CDL and joined Turner Logistics, a mid-sized freight company based out of Nashville, Tennessee. That was 15 years ago. The work is hard, real hard. You spend days, sometimes weeks on the road, sleeping in truck stops, eating at diners, watching the miles roll by through your windshield. It's lonely, sure, but it pays well if you're willing to put in the hours. And I was always willing. By the time I was 31, I had built what I thought was a solid life. I had money saved up, a good reputation with my company, and then I met Sarah. It was at a truck stop diner in Arkansas about 7 years ago now. She was working as a waitress there, and man, the first time I saw her, I swear my heart just about stopped. She had this auburn hair that caught the sunlight coming through the windows, and a smile that could light up the whole place. When she laughed, it was like music. She had this way of making even the loneliest trucker guys like me who spent weeks on the road feel like they mattered. I started taking routes that went through that particular truck stop more often than I probably should have. Each time, I'd sit at the counter, order coffee and pie, always pie, and talk to Sarah during her breaks. She told me about her dreams of having a real home, not the cramped apartment she shared with 2 roommates. She talked about wanting stability, someone she could count on. I knew right then and there that I could be that person for her. I wanted to be that person. 6 months later, I proposed to her in that same diner, on one knee between the counter and the booth section, with half the regulars watching and cheering. Sarah said yes with tears in her eyes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We married quickly, a small ceremony at the county courthouse with a handful of friends. Sarah quit her job at the diner. I insisted she didn't need to work anymore. I made good money on the road, often pulling in $70,000 to $80,000 a year with the long hauls and overtime. I wanted to take care of her, to give her the life she dreamed about, and I did. The first year of our marriage, I saved every penny I could. I took the longest routes, the toughest schedules, spending sometimes 5 or 6 days on the road at a time. I drove through blizzards in Montana, heat waves in Arizona, and endless stretches of Texas highway. But it was worth it. Every mile brought me closer to my goal. When I finally had enough for a down payment, I surprised Sarah by taking her to look at houses. She fell in love with a charming 2-story colonial in a quiet neighborhood in East Memphis. It had a white picket fence, a decent-sized backyard, and a front porch perfect for summer evenings. The price was steep, $350,000, but I didn't hesitate. I wanted to see that joy in Sarah's eyes, wanted to give her the stability she'd always longed for. We moved in on a sunny Saturday in May. I took a rare week off to help unpack and settle in. Sarah decorated with enthusiasm, choosing paint colors, hanging curtains, arranging furniture. I didn't care much about interior design, but I loved watching her create our home. "This is perfect," Sarah whispered one night as we lay in bed, the windows open to let in the spring breeze. "You've made me so happy, Jake." I pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "You deserve it, baby. You deserve everything." Over the next 3 years, I continued to provide. I upgraded our modest furniture to nicer pieces, a leather sectional for the living room, a king-sized bed with a memory foam mattress, a dining set made of real oak. I bought Sarah a new Nissan Rogue, paid in full, so she'd have reliable transportation. I installed central air conditioning, replaced the old water heater, and renovated the kitchen with stainless steel appliances. The appliances were my pride and joy: a top-of-the-line Samsung refrigerator with a touchscreen, a gas range that Sarah had admired at Home Depot, a dishwasher that was whisper quiet, and a washer-dryer set that could handle the biggest loads. I bought a 75-inch smart TV for the living room, a sound system that made movie nights feel like the theater, and even a hot tub for the backyard. Each purchase was made with Sarah in mind. I didn't need much for myself. Some comfortable clothes, my boots, and my truck were enough. But seeing Sarah smile when I brought home something new, seeing her eyes light up, that was everything to me. Sarah didn't work. She'd mentioned looking for jobs a few times in the early days, but nothing ever seemed to pan out. She'd studied marketing in community college but never finished her degree. The jobs she applied for either didn't call back or they didn't pay enough to make it worthwhile, she said. Eventually, she stopped looking altogether. I didn't mind. I liked the idea of Sarah being home, taking care of the house, being there when I called from the road. Besides, I made enough for both of us. Why should she struggle at some minimum wage job when I could provide? I'm just not cut out for the 9-to-5 grind, Sarah would say, curling up on the couch with her phone. I'm more of a creative person, you know? Those corporate jobs just drain the life out of you. I understood. Not everyone was built for hard work like I was. Sarah had other qualities. She was beautiful, charming, and she made our house feel like a home. That was enough. My schedule was demanding. I would typically leave on Monday morning and return late Thursday or early Friday, depending on the route. Some weeks, especially during the busy shipping seasons before holidays, I'd be gone for 6 or 7 days straight, driving from Memphis to Seattle, from Chicago to Miami, from anywhere to everywhere. The loneliness of the road was real, but I had made peace with it years ago. I'd listened to audiobooks and podcasts, talk radio, and country music stations. I'd call Sarah every night, hearing about her day, telling her about the miles I'd covered. Those phone calls were the highlight of my long drives. "I miss you," she'd always say. "I miss you too, baby. Just a couple more days and I'll be home." And when I did get home, I tried to make the most of my time with Sarah. I'd take her out to dinner at nice restaurants, catch a movie, or just spend quiet evenings together on the couch. I wasn't much for talking. I was tired from the road, but I was there, present, devoted. Sarah seemed happy enough, though I noticed she spent more and more time on her phone, scrolling through social media, texting friends, watching videos. Sometimes I'd come home and find the house exactly as I'd left it. Dishes in the sink, laundry unfolded, the bed unmade. But I didn't complain. She was probably just having a hard day. I'd tell myself. I'd clean up, do the laundry, make dinner, all without a word of reproach. "You're too good to me," Sarah would say, watching me from the couch. "That's what husbands do," I would reply with a tired smile. Our neighborhood was pleasant and quiet. Families with young children, retirees, and a few other couples our age. I knew most of the neighbors by sight, though I wasn't home enough to really get to know them well. I'd wave to Mr. Peterson next door when he was mowing the lawn, nod to the Johnsons across the street, exchange pleasantries with the mailman. But there was one neighbor I had more interaction with than others, David Chun, who lived 2 houses down. David was around my age, maybe a year or 2 younger, and worked from home as some kind of software consultant. He had a friendly, easy manner and was always willing to lend a hand. When my lawnmower broke down one Saturday, David came over with his own and helped finish the job. When a storm knocked down a branch in my yard, David was there with a chainsaw before I could even get one from the hardware store. He seemed like a genuinely good guy, and I appreciated having a reliable neighbor. "Thanks, man," I said after David helped me move the new refrigerator into place. "I owe you one." "Don't worry about it," David said with an easy smile. "That's what neighbors are for." Besides, Sarah already offered to make me cookies. So I think I'm coming out ahead here. I laughed. Sarah did make excellent chocolate chip cookies. Over time, I noticed that David and Sarah seemed to have become friends. When I was on the road, Sarah would mention that David had helped her with something. Fixing a leaky faucet, resetting the Wi-Fi router, bringing over a package that had been delivered to his house by mistake. David's been really helpful, Sarah would say during our nightly phone calls. I don't know what I'd do without him when you're gone. I was grateful. It was good to know Sarah had someone nearby she could rely on when I was halfway across the country. David seemed like a stand-up guy, and his girlfriend Melissa, if I remembered correctly, was pleasant enough on the few occasions we'd met. Life continued in this pattern. I worked hard, providing for Sarah and our home. Sarah stayed home, keeping me company through phone calls and welcoming me back after each long haul. The house filled with more and more comforts, a new patio set, a state-of-the-art home security system, even a riding lawnmower that I barely had time to use. Money was tight sometimes, especially with all the purchases, but I managed. I took on extra shifts, volunteered for the least desirable routes that paid more, and carefully budgeted every dollar. My savings account had taken a hit, but seeing Sarah happy in the home I'd built for her made it all worthwhile. You work too hard, Sarah would say sometimes, though she never suggested cutting back on our lifestyle. I work hard for us, I would respond, meaning every word. I loved her, despite the long absences, despite the growing feeling that we were drifting apart somehow, despite the small voice in the back of my mind that occasionally wondered if Sarah appreciated everything I did. I loved her. And I was not the kind of man who gave up on the people I loved. Part 2. The cracks begin to show. It was a Tuesday evening in late September when I first felt something was off. I just returned from a 4-day haul to Denver and back, exhausted but happy to be home. I pulled into the driveway at 6:30. Earlier than expected, I'd pushed through the last stretch without stopping for a full sleep break, eager to see Sarah. The house looked normal from the outside. The porch light was on, the lawn recently mowed, probably by David. I thought with a mental note to thank him, and Sarah's Rogue was parked in its usual spot. But something felt different as I unlocked the front door. The living room was dim, only one lamp on. The TV was off, which was unusual. Sarah typically had it on as background noise. I set down my overnight bag and called out, "Sarah? Baby, I'm home." There was a pause, then the sound of footsteps hurrying down the stairs. Sarah appeared, and I noticed immediately that her face was flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. "Jake, you're early." She came over and gave me a quick kiss, but there was something forced about it. "I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "Made good time," I said, studying her face. "You okay? You seem out of breath." "Oh, I was just working out upstairs. YouTube yoga video." She laughed, but it sounded nervous. You know me, trying to stay in shape. I had never known Sarah to do yoga, but I didn't push it. Maybe she was trying something new. "That's great, honey. I'm proud of you." I headed to the kitchen to grab a beer, and that's when I noticed it, 2 wine glasses on the counter, both with a small amount of red wine still in them. I didn't drink wine. Sarah occasionally did, but 2 glasses? Having a party without me? I joked, pointing at the glasses. Sarah's eyes widened for just a fraction of a second before she recovered. "Oh, that. Jen came over earlier. We were just catching up." Jen was Sarah's friend from her waitressing days. I nodded, accepting the explanation, though something still felt off. The wine glasses looked freshly used, not like they'd been sitting there for hours. But maybe Sarah just hadn't cleaned up yet. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Sarah seemed distracted when we talked on the phone during my hauls. She'd cut conversations short, saying she had things to do, or she'd forget to call me back when she said she would. When I was home, she seemed less interested in spending time with me. She'd stay up late watching TV after I went to bed, exhausted from driving. She'd make plans to go out with friends on the days I was home, leaving me alone in the house I'd worked so hard to fill with comfort. "I need a social life too, Jake," she said when I gently mentioned I'd like to spend more time together. "You're gone most of the week. I can't just sit around waiting for you." She was right, of course. I felt guilty for even bringing it up. I was being selfish, wanting her to rearrange her life around my schedule. But there were other small things that nagged at me. I'd come home to find the bed made differently than Sarah usually made it. I'd noticed David's truck in our driveway at odd hours, though Sarah always had a reasonable explanation. He was helping with something, dropping off mail, checking on a noise she'd heard. I trusted Sarah. I trusted David. I trusted that the uncomfortable feeling in my gut was just paranoia born from too many hours alone on the highway with nothing but my thoughts. Then came the night in early November that changed everything. I had been scheduled for a 5-day run to the West Coast, but the delivery destination changed at the last minute. Instead of Los Angeles, the freight was rerouted to a warehouse just outside Phoenix. Cut 2 days off my trip. The days I was home, leaving me alone in the house I'd worked so hard to fill with comfort. "I need a social life too, Jake," she said when I gently mentioned I'd like to spend more time together. "You're gone most of the week. I can't just sit around waiting for you." She was right, of course. I felt guilty for even bringing it up. I was being selfish, wanting her to rearrange her life around my schedule. But there were other small things that nagged at me. I'd come home to find the bed made differently than Sarah usually made it. I'd noticed David's truck in our driveway at odd hours, though Sarah always had a reasonable explanation. He was helping with something, dropping off mail, checking on a noise she'd heard. I trusted Sarah. I trusted David. I trusted that the uncomfortable feeling in my gut was just paranoia born from too many hours alone on the highway with nothing but my thoughts. Then came the night in early November that changed everything. I had been scheduled for a 5-day run to the West Coast, but the delivery destination changed at the last minute. Instead of Los Angeles, the freight was rerouted to a warehouse just outside Phoenix. Cut 2 days off my trip. I was thrilled. I'd be home by Wednesday night instead of Friday. I thought about calling Sarah to let her know, but decided to surprise her instead. Maybe we could have a late dinner together, reconnect a little. I'd been feeling the distance between us growing, and a surprise return might be just what we needed. I pulled into my driveway at 9:40 on Wednesday night. The house was mostly dark, just the upstairs bedroom light on. Sarah's Rogue was there, and so was David's truck, parked on the street right in front of our house. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. There could be a dozen innocent reasons for David to be there. Maybe something had broken and Sarah had called him for help. Maybe they were just hanging out, watching TV. Maybe Melissa was there too, and I just couldn't see her car. I sat in my truck for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, telling myself I was being ridiculous. Sarah loved me. David was our friend. Everything was fine. But when I opened the front door as quietly as possible and heard it, the unmistakable sound of Sarah's laughter, intimate and low, coming from upstairs, followed by David's voice, equally soft and familiar, I knew. I knew before I climbed the stairs. I knew before I pushed open the bedroom door. I knew before I saw my wife of 7 years in bed with our neighbor, tangled in the sheets I had bought, in the room I'd painted, in the house I'd worked myself to exhaustion to provide. For a moment, nobody moved. Sarah's face went white. David froze, his expression shifting from shock to horror to guilt in rapid succession. I just stood there, overnight bag still in my hand, work boots still on my feet, staring at the destruction of everything I'd believed in. "Jake," Sarah whispered, pulling the sheet up to cover herself. "Oh my God, Jake, I can... Get out," I said to David. My voice was calm, eerily calm. I surprised myself with how steady it sounded. David scrambled to grab his clothes, not looking at me, not looking at Sarah. He dressed with shaking hands and edged past me in the doorway, mumbling something that might have been an apology. I listened to David's footsteps rushing down the stairs, the front door opening and closing, the truck starting outside. Then there was silence, broken only by Sarah's rapid breathing. "Jake, please let me explain," Sarah started, tears already streaming down her face. "It's not what you think. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just... How long?" I interrupted. "What? How long has this been going on?" Sarah hesitated, and in that hesitation I had my answer. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a pattern, a secret life I'd been funding while I drove through the night to give her everything she wanted. 3 months, Sarah finally admitted, her voice barely audible. "Maybe 4. I don't know. Jake, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." 3 months. I repeated the words, letting them sink in. 3 months of phone calls where Sarah said she missed me. 3 months of coming home to a wife who was sleeping with another man in the bed I'd bought. 3 months of being made a fool. "I was lonely," Sarah said, the tears flowing harder now. "You're never here, Jake. I needed someone and David was there, and it just happened. But I still love you. I do. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. Please, Jake. Please don't give up on us." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd married, the woman I'd worked endless hours for, the woman I'd built a life around, was gone. Maybe she'd never really existed at all. "I need to think," I said finally. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room. We'll talk tomorrow." I walked out, closing the door behind me, and spent the night lying awake on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling everything I'd built crumbling around me. Part 3. The quiet dismantling. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room, listening to Sarah cry in the bedroom we'd shared, and felt something cold and final settling into my chest where my heart used to be. By dawn, the tears had stopped. I could hear Sarah moving around in the bathroom, then in the bedroom, the old floorboards creaking with her familiar footsteps. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 7 years, wanted to go to her, to try to salvage something from the wreckage. But a stronger part, the part that had spent the night replaying every moment of our marriage through a new, darker lens, kept me where I was. Around 7 a.m., there was a soft knock on the guest room door. "Jake." Sarah's voice was hoarse from crying. "Can we talk? Please." I sat up, still in yesterday's clothes, and said nothing. After a moment, the door opened slightly. Sarah stood there in her bathrobe, eyes red and swollen, looking genuinely devastated. "I made coffee," she offered weakly. I got up and followed her downstairs. We sat at the oak dining table I'd bought 2 years ago, the table where we'd shared countless meals, where Sarah had sat with her laptop pretending to job hunt, where I had paid the bills every month. "I know you're angry," Sarah began, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "You have every right to be. What I did was inexcusable. But Jake, our marriage, it's been broken for a while now. You have to see that." My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. "You're never here," Sarah continued, gaining momentum. "I spend weeks alone in this house. I have no life, no career, no purpose. I was drowning, Jake. David paid attention to me. He made me feel seen. I gave you everything," I said quietly. "You gave me things?" Sarah corrected, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her voice. "Things aren't the same as presence, Jake. Things aren't the same as a partner who's actually here." "I was here," I said, my voice still eerily calm. "I was here working my ass off so you could have this house, that car, every damn appliance and piece of furniture you wanted. I was here providing for you while you sat on the couch scrolling through your phone. Don't tell me I wasn't here." Sarah flinched. "That's not fair." "Fair." For the first time, emotion crept into my voice. "You want to talk about fair? I'll tell you what's not fair, Sarah. What's not fair is working 60-hour weeks so your wife can live comfortably, coming home to an empty bed while she's fucking the neighbor. What's not fair is finding out that while I was driving through snowstorms in Wyoming to make delivery deadlines, You were upstairs with David in the bed I bought, under the roof I'm paying for. I know, Sarah whispered, fresh tears falling. I know, and I'm so sorry, but we can fix this. We can start over. I'll end things with David completely. We can go to counseling. You could maybe find a different job, one where you're home more. No, I cut her off. No, we can't fix this. I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. I'm going to work. I have a job to do, bills to pay. We'll figure out the rest later. I walked out, leaving Sarah at the table, and drove to the Turner Logistics Depot. I told my dispatcher I needed a week off, the first time I'd requested unscheduled time off in my entire career. Then I drove around Memphis for hours just thinking. By the time I returned home that evening, I'd made my decision. But I wasn't going to rush it. I wasn't going to act in anger. I was going to be methodical, careful, and most importantly, legal. Sarah was waiting for me, having clearly spent the day working on her appearance and preparing dinner, things she rarely did anymore. She'd made my favorite pot roast, set the table with our nice dishes, even put on the dress I'd always liked. I want to fight for us, Jake, she said as we sat down. I know I messed up, but I love you. I do. Give me a chance to prove it. I ate in silence, considering my response. Finally, I said, Okay. Hope flooded Sarah's face. We'll try, I said, but things need to change. You need to cut off all contact with David. Block his number, avoid him completely. Can you do that? Yes, Sarah said immediately. Absolutely. I'll do whatever it takes. Good. I nodded, taking another bite of pot roast. And I think you should start looking for a job. Something to give you purpose, like you said. Sarah's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, but she nodded. Sure, I can do that. Over the next few days, I maintained the appearance of reconciliation. I was polite, even affectionate at times. I didn't bring up the affair again, didn't interrogate Sarah about details. To an outside observer, it might have seemed like we were genuinely trying to move past it. But I had already contacted a divorce attorney. He met with Stephen Feldman at a small office in downtown Memphis, laying out the situation in clear, unemotional terms. Tennessee was a no-fault divorce state, but adultery was still grounds for divorce if Jake wanted to pursue it that way. Feldman, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s, listened carefully. The house is in both your names? Feldman asked. No, Jake said. Just mine. I bought it before we got married, and I never added her to the deed. Feldman's eyebrows rose. That's unusual. Why not? Jake shrugged. I guess I just never got around to it. We talked about it once, but then forgot. In truth, Jake's father had advised him years ago to keep major assets in his own name until he was absolutely certain about the marriage. At the time, Jake had thought his father was being paranoid. Now, he was grateful for that old-fashioned caution. What about the cars? Feldman continued. Her Rogue is in my name. I bought it outright, paid cash. My truck is mine, bought before the marriage. Bank accounts, joint checking, but I have a separate savings account she doesn't have access to. Jake had opened it years ago for emergency funds and had never mentioned it to Sarah. There wasn't much in it. His generosity towards Sarah had drained most of his reserves, but it was something. Feldman leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. Mr. Morrison, you're in a much better position than most people who come through that door. Tennessee is an equitable distribution state, which means marital property gets divided fairly, not necessarily equally. Since the house and car are solely in your name and were purchased with your income, you have a strong argument for keeping them. What about all the stuff in the house? The appliances, furniture, all of that. Did you purchase those items during the marriage with your income? Yes. And did your wife contribute financially to any of it? No. She hasn't worked since before we got married. Feldman made a note. The court will likely consider those items marital property subject to division. But again, given the circumstances, your sole income, her adultery, even though Tennessee is no fault, you can probably negotiate a favorable settlement. The question is, do you want to pursue this aggressively or quietly? Jake thought about it. He could drag Sarah through the mud, use the adultery to paint her as a villain, make the divorce as painful and public as possible. Part of him wanted to, but a larger part just wanted to be free of her, to remove her from his life as cleanly as possible. I want it quiet, Jake said, but I also want what's fair. Fair by whose standard? Feldman asked knowingly. Jake met his eyes. By mine. We spent the next hour going over strategy. Feldman would file the divorce papers within the week, citing irreconcilable differences rather than adultery to keep things simpler. We'd offer Sarah a small settlement, $5,000, in exchange for her leaving the house and signing away any claim to the property and my assets. If she fought it, we'd mention the adultery and make things more difficult. Most likely, she'll take the settlement, Feldman predicted. $5,000 seems generous when the alternative is walking away with nothing and having her infidelity become part of the public record. I nodded. It was more than Sarah deserved, in my opinion, but it would ensure a clean break. But I had other plans beyond the legal proceedings. Plans that Feldman didn't need to know about. Part 4. Piece by piece, the Samsung refrigerator was the first to go. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace on a Friday afternoon, pricing it at $800, well below its original $2,000 price tag, but I wanted it gone quickly. By Saturday morning, a young couple from Cordova had come to pick it up, their eyes wide with delight at the deal they were getting. "This is incredible," the wife gushed, examining the touch screen. "We've been saving for a new fridge for months, but they're so expensive." "It's a good one," I said, helping her husband load it onto their truck. "Barely used. Treat it well." Sarah was out. She'd mentioned something about meeting a friend for lunch, though I suspected she was probably finding ways to secretly communicate with David despite her promises. I'd given her just enough rope to hang herself with, maintaining the illusion of reconciliation while quietly preparing my exit. When Sarah came home that evening, she went straight to the kitchen for a drink and stopped dead. "Jake," she called out, her voice sharp with panic. "Jake, where's the refrigerator?" I came downstairs from the guest room where I'd been staying, despite Sarah's pleas for me to return to our bedroom. "Sold it." "You sold it? Our refrigerator? Where am I supposed to keep food?" "I bought a mini fridge at Walmart," I said calmly, gesturing to the small unit now humming in the corner where the Samsung had stood. $49. It'll hold what you need." Sarah stared at me, mouth open. "Are you insane? That thing is tiny. What about all our groceries? What about them?" I interrupted. "The Samsung was mine, Sarah. I bought it with my money. I can sell it if I want. But we're married. That makes it ours." I gave her a long look. "Funny how you remember we're married when it's convenient for you." Sarah's face flushed. "That's not fair. We're trying to work through things, and you're sabotaging us by selling our appliances." "My appliances," I corrected. "And I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm just making some adjustments." Over the next 2 weeks, more items disappeared. The 75-inch TV vanished one day while Sarah was out, replaced by a 20-inch model I had picked up at a pawn shop for $30. The leather sectional went next, sold to a furniture reseller. I replaced it with a threadbare love seat from Goodwill. The gas range, the dishwasher, the sound system, all sold, one by one. I replaced them with the absolute bare minimum. A used electric stove with 2 working burners, a dish rack for hand washing, nothing for entertainment except the tiny TV. Sarah's protests grew more desperate with each disappearance. "You're being cruel," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face as she surveyed the increasingly empty living room. "This is emotional abuse, Jake. You're punishing me." "I'm liquidating assets," I replied, my voice maddeningly calm. "I've got some debts to pay off." Times are tough, you know? We all have to make sacrifices. "Bullshit. You're doing this to hurt me." "Am I? Or am I just taking back what's mine?" I looked at her with cold eyes. You wanted to talk about what's fair earlier, Sarah. Is it fair that I work myself to death to buy nice things for us, and you repay me by fucking the neighbor? Is that fair? Sarah had no answer to that. The washer and dryer were next. I sold the set for $600 and told Sarah she could use the laundromat on Poplar Avenue if she needed to wash clothes. The riding lawnmower went for $400. The hot tub, Sarah's favorite luxury, was drained and sold to a guy who hauled it away for $500 cash. With each sale, I felt a grim satisfaction. These weren't just appliances and furniture. They were symbols of my misplaced trust, my wasted devotion, years of my life spent providing for someone who had thrown it all away for a few hours of excitement with the neighbor. I documented everything carefully, keeping receipts and records. Legally, I was in the clear. The items had been purchased with my sole income, and I was selling them at fair market value, putting the money into my personal savings account. Feldman had reviewed my plan and given it a cautious thumbs up, though he'd warned me that it was walking a fine line. Just make sure you're not leaving her without the basic necessities, Feldman had advised. You don't want this to look like you're trying to force her out through deprivation. I made sure to leave the basics. Sarah had a bed to sleep in, not the memory foam king-sized mattress we'd shared, which I had sold and replaced with a cheap, full-sized one from IKEA, but a bed nonetheless. She had the mini fridge for food, the working stove, running water, electricity, heat. She wasn't suffering. She just wasn't living in luxury anymore. The house itself became a shell of what it had been. Where there had once been comfort and abundance, there was now Spartan simplicity. The walls still had Sarah's paint colors, but the rooms were mostly empty. Every day, Sarah came home to find something else gone. "This is crazy," she said one night, her voice hollow. "You've lost your mind." "Maybe," Jake acknowledged. "Or maybe I finally found it." Through it all, Jake maintained his work schedule. He still took his long-haul routes, still drove through the night, still called Turner Logistics his employer. But now, every dollar he earned went into his savings account, building up his reserves for the life he was going to build without Sarah. The divorce papers were served to Sarah on a rainy Tuesday morning in early December. Jake had left for a 3-day haul to Atlanta the night before, and a process server showed up at the door at 9 a.m. When Jake called that evening for their usual check-in, Sarah was hysterical. "You're really doing this?" she sobbed into the phone. "After everything we've been through, after I said I was sorry, you're just throwing away our marriage? You threw it away when you slept with David," Jake said. "I'm just making it official. I can't believe you. You're heartless, cold. I never knew this side of you." "That makes two of us," Jake replied. "I never knew you were capable of what you did either. Guess we both learned something." Sarah tried begging, reasoning, guilt-tripping. She promised it would never happen again. She swore she'd get a job, contribute financially, be the wife Jake deserved. She even suggested couples therapy again, maybe a trial separation instead of a divorce. Jake listened to it all with a detachment that surprised even him. 6 months ago, her tears would have broken his heart. Now they just sounded like noise. "The lawyer included a settlement offer," Jake said, cutting through her pleas. $5,000 and you walk away clean. No fight, no drama. Just sign the papers and take the money. $5,000? Sarah's voice went shrill. "That's insulting. I put 7 years into this marriage. I deserve more than that." "You deserve exactly what you contributed," Jake said, "which, financially speaking, is nothing. The $5,000 is a courtesy, Sarah. You don't have to take it. We can go to court, let a judge decide how to split things up." Of course,